Thank you. Mr. McCormick, we're ready when you are.
Okie dokie. But we have no public comment at this time, so let's move on to SiteLogic's presentation.
Thank you. We'll get it kicked off for you today. We have a pretty short agenda. We'll continue to talk about prioritizing 2023 projects only, and we'll just hit on all of the main projects we've been discussing with the garage, salt storage, parking, South Middle School kitchen. We'll touch on facility maintenance projects and round it out with a discussion about financial analysis of those. Very few upcoming board approvals tonight. Obviously, we're really trying to hone in on that 2023 project prioritization, and then just to kind of carry that forward on the 13th, making those board recommendations on which projects you would like to see coming up in the next year. We'd like to take a moment to celebrate and talk about the ribbon cutting that we participated in. It was a beautiful day for those tennis courts, and as you can see here, we have this pretty unique view that we were able to capture of all of the senior players participating in those doubles matches. Just a very small collection of photos that we were able to mark the occasion with, and we are all proud partners of the Pennard School District, and we were so pleased to be able to enjoy the festivities, and I think the students really appreciated it. Shout out to Rami, who was there in full splendor on a probably 90-degree day, so good job, Rami.
And I just really, if you go back,
Yeah.
I just really want to thank SiteLogic in terms of you made that day special for the kids. There obviously was a level of disappointment for our seniors, right? And so to be able to celebrate them, there is a hanging right by the door that memorializes the feedback that those seniors had to the courts, because they were the ones who picked the colors and made that determination. And so SiteLogic made a nice plaque for them that's hanging right by the opening gate. Did a really nice job in terms of gave out some scholarships. So there were 2 students, one male, one female, that received scholarships on behalf. SiteLogic did that to just kind of thank the seniors as they're moving on to what comes next, and just really did a nice job making it a big deal. There were really cool cookies. It was just really nice, and the seniors just loved. The whole ceremony probably was over by 3:15, 3:20. I walked back to my office and I can see the courts from there. About 4:45, I looked back out of my office, and there still were multiple kids hitting on the courts. Like, they were just glad to be back on the tennis courts hitting. It just was really, really neat. And they look more rectangular than the photo they showed us. They do seem to align better than that. I don't know what that.
Yeah, they don't bend. Yeah.
And just for the community benefit, the courts are open, and so we have 7 courts. 2 of them are lined for pickleball, and so if there are community members who appreciate pickleball, they can access those courts outside of school hours. And so over the summer, they'll be available and open during the day for people if they want to use them. So thank you again.
Yes, it's our
Yeah.
pleasure.
And thank you for having the weather cooperate,
Yeah.
making this comfortable.
Yeah.
Scheduling.
Yeah. We were finally able to get Mother Nature on speed dial for those courts. Andy's going to transition now and talk about our maintenance garage projects.
Big differences in the last 30 days since we last met is we've taken the direction from the facility committee from last time and are exclusively focusing on the salt shed located next to the district support center on the high school, middle school campus. Leaving over at the existing maintenance department facility parcel, only the maintenance garage. Jurisdictionally, approval-wise, the next milestone is June 20th from a submission deadline standpoint to make it onto the July 14th planning committee agenda, and that'll also apply to the standalone salt shed adjacent to the district support center. Some adjustments to the actual design are none on the garage maintenance. Structure itself is the same. Everything would be ramifications from the removal of the salt shed from the property. And then we're still piecing through on the salt shed. There's 2 slides from now. Next slide is the schedule. We modified the timing for the benefit of the committee. As it relates to the garage maintenance, we've separated the bid events, the procurement events, that's separate. And on the garage maintenance, you're seeing basically a month pushback because of some of the circumstances and redesign work over the last month or two that we've been going through, the normal course of the project. But also taking the committee's direction of, from an installation standpoint, desiring the project to be a 2023 install from a budgeting standpoint. So you're no longer seeing a forecasted construction start in 2022 in the fall. It's all March with a completion of October 2023. Bid event, board approval wise, you're looking at an November approval, October bid event. So when we come back in August and September, we'll get hot and heavy on budgets. Look for a green light in August to go out to bid. And we'll spend September doing that and present in October. Next slide's the salt.
Just go back to the, what was the fire pump? What is that? The fire pump required? That's something new?
Sure, so the garage maintenance structure, because of the size of it, requires sprinklers. And through the normal course of that particular, going through that requirement, some of the due diligence you do is you do a water test from the street to see what your pressure is from the service provider. And if the water pressure isn't of adequate pressure to make it up to the sprinkler level, you have to add a fire pump. When you add a fire pump, you're looking at the electrical requirements to it, the size, where you put it, egress for the fire, for the emergency personnel and whatnot.
So what's the added cost on that?
It can range. We're still going through what the ancillary, and depending on where the location is and how we bring it into the site, but it could be anywhere from 15 to 25. Great question, though. On the salt location, the direction that we last met was focusing on BCD, focus on the district support center. We had met with the township supervisors related to some of the ramifications tied to the challenges with the impervious square footage area on the high school, middle school campus. That was a very helpful meeting. At this point, the design team is exclusively focusing on option D. There is an underground electric line that is currently in conflict with D. Once we complete the due diligence on that field investigation on the electric line, if it's owned by the district versus if it's owned by PP&L, if it's owned by the district, we believe we could just put the building on top of it and protect the line. If it's by PP&L, we might have to consider option C. That's the difference between option C. Option B is no longer a focus of the team right now. So it's D or C. And that also is targeting that June 20th submission for the July 14th planning commission meeting.
And do I remember that option B, the struggle with option B that we talked about last time has to do with the grade there where it's built? I can almost see the dotted lines where it kind of goes away pretty quickly. We're putting it up on D, it's more level. Is that why we primarily where we move from B to behind the building for C and D?
Yes, it's
Okay.
primarily level. It's centralized from a maintenance facility operation standpoint. You also have post this project, the secure fence is being relocated and will be in conflict with B, so it will require between that ADA sidewalks and whatnot. C and D resulted in more efficient cost and a more appropriately sized, must have no retaining walls.
And Mr. Harper, any concerns in terms, obviously if there's a snow event, the buses and the salt are not moving at the same time. So obviously location isn't a problem in terms of traffic. Any concern about getting in and out in terms of accessing it? You're comfortable with where both C and D are and prioritizing D if it works?
Right, D is currently the best option we have. B, like Andy said, it started adding cost, retention walls and the grading there. So D it's a flatter surface, it's inside the fenced-in area. Like you said, busing and salt don't normally happen at the same time. Salt's usually prior to the buses moving, so I don't see a conflict in that location.
B also had a conflict with your incoming gas service line too, from 5th Street.
Okay.
So we would have to, that we can't just put up.
And the other component, which B and D is the same, but the actual loader equipment that loads the salt is housed in between B and C. So it still focuses on that equipment and logistics. It just works out overall.
Thank you.
The last benefit between B and D is B would have most certainly triggered 1,000 square footage of impervious added, which would trigger land development. Whereas D, we believe we'd be able to stay under that threshold and request on behalf of the school district, a waiver to land development, speed of jurisdictional approvals.
Do we know how, what the size of that electric line is that they're gonna either encase or move?
I'm not sure if we've determined that. It is one of the main feeds for the building, but it's a large service. There's a large transformer sitting adjacent to it.
Okay,
But I think the
Transformer.
consensus is they should be able to encapsulate it in concrete, so it shouldn't be significant.
okay.
It's like Andy said, do we own it or does PP&L own it? And that's where the question lies, which way we go.
So everybody's telling us that you guys own it, but we wanna make sure you guys own it, right?
Little verification of that?
Yeah, take a whole
Probably a good
plan around it and
idea.
go, oh, wait.
To avoid any problems.
Right. Next slide is the schedule. Here, similar to other, we can separate them. We're gonna try to maybe a unique procurement approach here where we do a combination of co-stars, possibly some change orders to the existing contracts you have, and also public bid in order to best position the school district in this particular project with now that the scope's getting, more simpler, and so forth. Timing wise, looking at same August will be where the board, we'd be looking for the board to greenlight the project to go out to bid. If it's the components that might have co-stars with it, have those proposals available. If there's any change orders that are opportunistic with your existing contracts, have those available for the board's consideration. The big public bid component would occur in September. Approvals in October. Start-wise, we put the advantage of a potential goal of actually being SALT operational by Thanksgiving, with still work to follow afterwards, mainly the roof. Some of the longer lead items we're thinking about that would continue into 2023, but allow the district to minimize its costs.
You're okay with that schedule?
Yeah, and the benefit, to like Andy said, the Site Logic team has come up with a potential avoid the temporary salt storage, and we need some things to align to make that happen, but if we could have it in one place and not building one and operation out of another, I think that's in the best interest for the district.
Great, good.
Crazy idea, but that's the plan right now. Ne-
We'll take crazy if it works.
If it works.
No pressure. The last meeting, there seemed to be some indication that it was gonna be cheaper to not do the salt storage at the hurdles that we needed to overcome were too great from a financial standpoint and a community standpoint. Is that still the case, that we think it's still a savings by moving it over to this location?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and even more savings, the more and more we're able to define those unknowns, the more and more we're able to go, oh yeah, let's make this decision and make it even more cheaper, and this more cost effective. 30 days ago, being operational by Thanksgiving wasn't on the table. So those are the type of circumstances, not only with the project cost itself, but the indirect project cost, the ancillary or consequential cost from an operational standpoint that hopefully we can capitalize on and gain for the school district.
And we should have no problem from the township, from the fact that we're doing it on our property versus across the street, which is adjacent to the residents.
All indications support a
The
less
township-
complications, a township approval
Right.
at the July planning commission, and hopefully township supervisors later that same month.
Okay. Moving on to phase 2 paving at the high school campus. We had talked about this being an all-inclusive project, but it seemed, moving into 2023, that there was discussion about what to do with Lab 2. And what we have now received direction on is that new parking lot 2, which is that dark gray area, which Andy is now showing you, we're now prioritizing that for 2024. There will be a new parking lot right next to the new tennis courts that will help supplement some of the tight parking here on the high school campus, and that will be kind of monitored to see how that helps with the current traffic situation and parking situation, and that it will inform whether or not a new parking lot is needed. but prioritized for 2023 are all of the area and travel lanes that you can see in those hatch marks and the main drive area 1, which is set to be removed and replaced for 2023. So refreshing that area, new pavement, new line striping, new pedestrian walkways, crosswalks. As a part of this project, just no brand new parking lot too. And Carolyn, please let me know if there's anything that we missed discussing the scope. So this has been an updated scope.
If you remember, we talked last meeting about some of the costs are increased. And so as we looked at planning, and so one of the suggestions one of the board members had was to consider pushing off some paving and maybe waiting. Currently, the lot 1 that's being done this summer is just over 100 extra spaces. I think it's like 140 extra spaces for lot 1, which should accommodate currently the number of requests we get, both from a staff member and a student standpoint. And so what we'd like to do is take a year and monitor that new lot to see whether that really does fulfill the purposes of what we need. And they roughly were 50-50 in terms of cost. So the part that we're doing is about that 1.7 million. The lot 2 was about another 1.7 million. They were about 50-50. So what we're thinking about doing is taking that second 1.7 and waiting. And if we still need it, we can prioritize that money into 2024. But that gives us a year to live it.
Yeah.
But we feel like we can't wait to do the parts, areas 1 and 2, because they really are the parts that are in need of some care. And so to be able to update them in 2023, and it should not significantly change the price if we wait for lot 2 of 2024. Actually, if petroleum participates, perhaps it might even be a little cheaper by 2024. But really it's to live it with lot 1 and see whether that's enough. And perhaps we come back a year from now and say we don't need to do lot 2 currently because lot 1's enough and all the movement things work. So that's our recommendation. That's what's changed. We're going to keep the plans out there, but we're going to suggest that we push half of that project back a year from a money standpoint.
Sounds good.
The other benefit of delaying too is the project's already approved jurisdictionally, and because it's separated from the actual maintenance, you could theoretically do lot 2 during the school year and not have to wait,
You wouldn't impact it.
when you would be impacting taking parking spaces.
Questions on this? Okay.
And
South
Sean?
Middle School kitchen. We touched on this. I think you are seeing the updated floor plan, which we just received, I think, a week and a half ago. So thank you, Bruce, for providing that for the committee to review tonight. We've worked out some of the equipment locations within the kitchen along that south wall. Yes, there and there.
Yeah.
And we're just continuing to work with the district on refining equipment layout, any specific types of requirements, and very specific equipment that we had in the space. Bruce is here, he can give us any more details regarding these spaces if needed.
Right, so that's the layout that was presented to Kelly and Gina. We've gotten some feedback and some questions. We're addressing the questions. This layout is all coordinated with your existing structure now. That's all been worked out. And my next step is really taking a look at receiving and the general storage areas off to the right side there that don't show anything, those 2 rooms, working that out with Kelly, making sure we have everything covered in those 2 spaces. Meanwhile, we're on schedule, we're moving forward, and we look forward to, the ability to get pricing come this fall, based on this scheme.
And this scheme is different than the one that was presented to us last month.
Yeah.
So what changed between the two? I mean,
Um,
you don't have to go through the
Yeah, I
specifics,
know.
but
Yeah.
from a conceptual standpoint, it looks like some rooms got bigger. The copier room was smaller on the one that was
Yep.
before, and this dry storage area now is smaller.
Mhm.
So what was the thinking behind all that?
So one of the main things that changed, there was a bump out near the point of sale system that would interfere with future projects and how they use the space today. Just the moving around of the dry storage and the other spaces, I believe, had to do with the structural column. And the blank spaces are some minor changes we just need to put on paper to have that correct layout at the end of the project. Did that answer your question? Or
Yeah, so it was just more from a design standpoint as opposed to a structural issue.
Right, we've gone through this, and Gina and I have, looking at that space, is it functional, and it's a huge improvement from what's there currently, so it all works out pretty well.
One of the discussions that we've been having around South Middle School Kitchen is the significant equipment procurement and the timelines that we are now all aware of. Equipment procurement can be difficult in a regular construction project, but the impacts of COVID and certain market pricing, we, as we move forward and finalize all of the equipment within this space, we are recommending to this committee that you allow us to go out for early procurement of the equipment, so we can have it in time, in place for the project, functional for the start of school. So we will have those timelines available for Kelly shortly here.
And what that means is be prepared at the August cycle meetings that we probably will have at least food service equipment pricing for under the energy law, a potential amendment, so that we can go and get those items with the rest of the pricing maybe to follow in
That's
September.
really fun numbers, so we
Yeah.
can make sure we get them equipped.
So rest up this summer because August we might.
That brings us to the remaining building maintenance projects that you're familiar with. This probably looks a little different than the format that you're used to seeing. This is usually in a green box in front of you, but we've just summarized it here for this discussion. We have different scopes throughout the district at the different schools. I don't want to spend a lot of time reading them all to you, but a lot of it is interior finishes like flooring in some of the buildings, exterior masonry restoration, in some cases repair, and scopes of work to support kind of what we will be doing along the salt shed at the district support center. You know, we're kind of in that area already, and it makes sense to take care of some of the site and building envelope issues that we see there.
Mr. Harper, can I clarify that, because this is a different format in terms of the green 23 sheet that we've looked at. I just want to clarify that there's nothing up there that is new, but there were a couple things that have been removed to save a little money, either because they've been prioritized to a different year, or we've found that we can do them within existing funds within your budget. Is that accurate, that there's nothing up there that's new?
That's correct, there were
Okay.
a few things removed, but for the most part, there's definitely nothing new on this.
I like that we're touching 8 of our 13 buildings.
Absolutely.
Right, if you think
Sure.
about in terms
Yep.
of making improvements at 8 of our 13, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And this slide should be familiar with everyone. It was presented last month, but the update for this month is that we have now been able to adjust those budget prices that you'll see there, and that represents a low and a high range that we expect to see going forward as we put these projects into place and bid them out. So everything at the top of the screen are all the scopes of work that we've been discussing for prioritization. And then we're always carrying kind of those 3 major projects to be prioritized, further discussion down the line for this facility committee to consider.
Is the expectation that you would like approval for the 23, we're talking summer of 23, so a whole year from now, for those items at the June board meeting?
Yes, that's
Right.
gonna help us go forward.
I obviously will reach out to the other board members that are not here tonight to
Yeah.
make sure. I mean, there's not anything new that we've learned. We are gonna talk about the financial impact and how that hits our existing funds. That's the next item on the agenda, so we will take a look at that range. We use the high end of the range on purpose to kind of say, so if it comes out to be 9.3 million, where does that fit into our capital planning for the summer of 23, and what will that look like moving forward? We asked them to put those bottom 3 items on there because we've talked about all 3 of them as well, and so they've continued to get us pricing in terms of those ranges. That as we look at our financial capabilities to kind of say, do or when would any or all of those 3 projects fit in to our discussions?
And just to note the asterisk at the bottom of the screen, we will make the commitment to continue to update budget pricing as the market conditions fluctuate and the information that we receive from them We always want to see that trend downward. We're hoping for that over the summer, that, we'll be in a great place, but that is our responsibility to you, to provide you with that real-time information.
That's good.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, and that's it. That's our presentation.
Great.
Questions?
It's simple.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Next on our lovely list is capital project funding discussion. Mr. Dauber?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
There you go. Thank you, Chester, appreciate it. Okay, this is just a one pager, it's also on your, you can bring it up on your screen if you want to.
I'm gonna make it bigger if I can.
Yeah. So it's a lot of numbers. But basically what we're trying to do here is show you the running balance of our capital projects fund. The first column, summer of 2021, so that's the fund balance as of June 30th, 2021, which is our last financial report. It was about $18.3 million in capital projects. This year, we have about $5.2 million of costs that happened from July on last summer. So it would be about 13.1 is where I'm estimating will be at the end of the fiscal year. Now, at the end of this fiscal year, 6/30/22, as you know, we always look to move money from excess money from the general fund to capital projects fund. Right now, my estimate is about 4.1 million that we will have as a surplus to move to capital projects fund. And we also know that the projects that we've committed to for this summer will cost us in the range of $6.8 million. So when we look at that, we figure we have about $10.4 million coming into that 2023 year, which is what we're talking about now. So now we're gonna move forward. Next summer is 2023, 24 and 25. How do we fund that? That's what we're trying to work on. So our standard estimate at the end of a fiscal year, so let's say next fiscal year, 6/30/2023, we add another $2 million. The projects that we just talked about with SiteLogic on their estimate sheets, the high estimate, $9.2 million. What we've done here, the difference between what you saw last month and here is we talked, Dr. Bolton said, we were going to delay that parking lot of it. So that's about $1.6 million, $1.7 million estimate that we pulled out of this number, right? We'll delay that, and now you can see the next summer, $12.1 million. So that estimate is now in that year. But what we're trying to do is build up funds to get to that point, right? Because at this time next year, we'll know what that $2 million really is, and it'll give us a much better ability to say what project we can actually do out of that $12 million next summer. Okay, so then the next summer, the 2025 summer. Oh, I'm sorry, before I jump to that, you can see the debt drop-off happens. So we have an extra $6 million coming into capital that year, we're estimating, okay? Then, when we go to summer of 2025, again, we're estimating our drop-off, all right, plus our transfer in at the end of the year. And we have about $4.8 million on the high side of the project. So we're working those 3 summers at 23, 24, and 25, estimating out. So at the end of that year, we're about $4 million. So this is the sticking point.
Yep.
Hopefully, this $2 million is more, gives a much better idea. Hopefully, it's a lot more than that, and that we're able to fund those projects. If not, we'll have to talk about, okay, maybe some of that $12 million we push out here because we know we're getting that extra money.
Yep.
Okay? So that's what we're looking at, and we'll continue to walk our way through the next 3 years and do that. And then we also have down here our big projects that have not been, we haven't put them any place yet, but we're just putting them on there so that the number's there, those other things. So, but you can see as, and we've also always estimated coming out here, $2 million for maintenance projects and another $300,000 for kitchens. Now what we've seen though, is the last couple of kitchens, that number has exploded because of what kitchens need. So we're moving away from just some equipment to really having to do a lot of work on those kitchens so that that the 300,000 probably isn't real accurate anymore. So those,
Sorry. If you touch that screen, I think we'll go back to the, oh, no, it won't. Here comes our save the day. Let's see if we can get it back to, see, he thought it was gonna be that way too. Okay.
Ooh, here we go.
thank you, sir. Okay.
And so I want to clarify what I think I just heard you say. If we look at that bottom, not the balance line, but the one above that that says summer capital projects, right? It says less estimated summer capital projects.
This slide,
And so the 6.9 million is this summer,
summer of 2022.
right?
This,
The summer that's about to begin.
Yep.
The 9.3 is what we just saw, and that's our estimate for next summer. And
Yes.
that's really what we're looking to commit to. The other two numbers, actually the other two numbers, the 12.1 and the 4.8, are what's currently on the sheets that have been prioritized through the work of SiteLogic and Mr. Hartley.
Yes.
So those are the projects we've spoken about
Mhm.
and that we have pricing for as they've updated their pricing. And so that's where those numbers come from. Once you get to the summer of 2026, that 2.3, those are the placeholders. When we talk about what I would call normal maintenance, we try to say that's about $2 million a summer, right? This summer it's about 1.7, I believe, if you look at our,
Just under 2.
yeah, just under 2, our normal maintenance, and then the kitchen piece. And so there is not, the plan currently goes out through the summer of 25, and it does not include any of the, what I'd call the 3 big ticket items on the bottom. I tentatively add a fourth one that we've talked about trying to, as we talked about baseball at one of our community, right, that baseball softball complex, and whether there still is a look to be able to find that someplace. That obviously hasn't been found nor priced yet, but that could add to that bottom box in terms of looking at year 4. You can see why from this standpoint, we are not recommending that we consider any of those 3, what I would call larger projects, at least through the summer of 2025, that we get a sense for what really happens for unused fund balance
Right.
and what happens to the pricing of the items as we get a year from now or 2 years from now, from that standpoint. So that's the information we want to provide. We want to hope that you're comfortable through the summer of 2023 and that we're okay moving forward with that 9.3 million for that summer, and then everything else we can continue to monitor and look into.
And we definitely have the money in place to do the things like Andy talked about, the pre-buy, the kitchen equipment. So the money is there. It's not like we're waiting for that money. So we're okay. It's when we get to here in that 2024 year where we might have to massage a little bit based on what we have coming in that year before as a transfer in. And hopefully that's more than $2 million. That's just our normal conservative estimate. That would be $2 million coming in. So that's where we're at.
Awesome.
Very good.
Like it.
Any questions?
All good. All good on my book.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Now, up next on our list is the annual testing for lead in drinking water. Sir?
I don't think he has that.
You have that sheet that looks like this?
I think it's the one before that, maybe.
Nope.
No.
If not, the big green colors will answer the story.
Yeah.
Green is good.
So, Pennsylvania Act 39 requires school districts to test drinking water in all of our schools. So this year we did testing. We typically do a representative sample in every building, 5 locations. We're making our rounds to all the water fountains and potential drinking sources for students until we complete all the buildings. So you can see a white block in here. We actually had several high tests last year, so we decided to test the entire building, and we remediated any problems that we had, so the entire West Rock Hill Elementary tested good for drinking water lead component. All the other green, you can see, they all cleared the test, and there was 2 lines of red. For Central Middle School, they had 2 above the actionable threshold of 15 parts per billion. So we isolated those 2 faucets, we replaced them, we retested it, and it was actually the faucets that were the culprit for the lead. And our testing results revealed that they were below the 15 part per billion. We put them back in service, so we've completed our annual testing, and now all the drinking sources that have been tested are cleared for lead.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Sean, we're turning back to you.
Okay, we have some RFP results that Kelly did. Kelly worked with our neighboring districts to put together 3 different RFPs for maintenance work, annual maintenance work within the district. The first is annual boilers and boiler maintenance and tuning. And if you look at the attachment on your computer, we got 5 different companies that responded to the RFP. As the group of districts that we went out with Palisades, Quakertown, Upper Perk, and us, and some for these. And what happened? For our boilers, HSA Mechanical Services was the lowest responsible responder, and the cost is $16,263 for each of the 3 years for the annual boiler and burner maintenance. And inspection.
Why were ours so much more expensive than the other ones? We just have bigger boilers, more space, more.
Typically, it's how many burners and boilers you have. We have more schools than most of the other districts. That's why our number will be higher. And one of the reasons we do that with our neighbors is really, it's a benefit to have everyone go in for that. If one vendor is the winning bidder, they get more work in our area. So everyone benefits, even the smaller schools. You'll see in other RFPs that we do, like trash, the tech school's part of that group. They weren't part of this one, but it just gets savings for all the districts in the area is why we do it.
The next page of the spreadsheet is the annual emergency generator inspection and maintenance. Here we had 3 different bidders or companies respond to the RFP. Excuse me. The lowest responsible for the school district was Modern Group, and the cost is $58.10 for year 1. Goes up a little bit year 2 and 3 at $6,090 and $6,370.
Thank you.
And then the third bid that we put out, or RFP that we put out, was for our, fire suppression services. And Johnson Controls was the lowest responder for this one. Our cost will be $12,480.58 per year. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything to add to this, Kevin?
No, the only point to note is that every one of these has an increase to some proportion, just because that's how services are nowadays. But we retain the same 2 vendors for fire suppression and boilers. It's a new vendor for emergency generators. That's actually the biggest increase, about $1,600 per year. But all in all, I think we did good with the RFPs.
Nice.
Fantastic. Good to hear. Thank you. Obsolete items?
Okay, we have a few obsoletes this month. At the high school, we have a library weeding log. We'll put that out on public surplus to sell those books. At Sellersville Elementary School, we have some technology equipment that we're recycling. In the technology department, we have March and April recycling, May recycling, and June recycling. So there's just all outdated machines that we're moving on from. At Deibler, we just have some very scrap items there, trash or scrap, we're getting rid of, and they also have a library weeding log. And then at Guth Elementary School, we have some textbooks that we're getting rid of, and we'll put them on public surplus also. So,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
sure thing.
Next on our list is our district health and safety plan. I'm going to turn to Dr. Volk on that one.
Yeah, really, why this is on the agenda is any LEA that is receiving ESSER's funding as part of the American Rescue Plan is required to consider their health and safety plan every 6 months. And so if there is a significant change or any change at all to health and safety plan, we obviously need to get community input and then bring it before the board for approval. We at this time do not recommend any changes to our health and safety plan. We feel as though it has worked for us over the last 6 months and are suggesting that we continue that into the beginning of next school year. But we need to publicly announce that we have considered it. And since we're not making any changes, it will be an informational item only that I will make a similar announcement at the board meeting next week. Did I handle that okay, Dr. Robarczyk? All right.
And then we'll revisit it in November of 2022
Right.
again.
So 6
Great.
months from now, we'll have to
Do it
do
again.
this consideration again.
6 months is December though.
We don't meet in December.
I know. I just want just clarification, so I did my math
Thank
right.
you for the math, yes.
Nothing else on our agenda. Our next facility committee meeting will be determined. So, thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
And on to finance. Finance committee. We'll start with 2022, 2023 lunch breakfast prices. This is G.
Mrs. Gerenton is here to go over that.
Hi. Okay, so every year at this time, we review our breakfast and lunch prices for the next school year. So in front of you, we have listed what our current elementary and middle school and high school breakfast and lunch prices. And we have our proposed prices next to that for next school year. So for our lunch prices, we are proposing a 15-cent increase for each of those. So the elementary lunch would go to $2.75 and middle school and high school would be $3.25. And then our breakfast prices, we are suggesting a 25-cent increase for the both elementary and middle school and high school breakfast. And I think I spoke to you guys about this before, and the reason for this is because of the skyrocketing food costs. So that's why we're proposing
And
increases.
we have not increased them in how many
I
years?
I looked back because I knew someone would
Yeah.
ask that, and we increased 10 cents on lunch. It was in 2021, but for that school year, we had only operated with full pay for 2 weeks, and then the USDA implemented all the waivers, and then everything went to free. So, and then prior to that, I think it was over 3 years
Yeah, it was a
since we had
expand
did any
before.
kind of a
Okay.
price increase.
Thank you.
So.
And we are not expecting USDA to give us free meals next year at this point.
As of today, there's still no movement on that, but,
When they did free meals, at what rate did they determine the meals to be reimbursed at?
so the free meal rate currently, right now, we get reimbursed for lunch is $4.62, and for breakfast, it's $2.60. So it's way different when it goes back to the National School Lunch and School Breakfast pricing. That isn't released until after July 1st, but I did look back just because it's been so long since we operated that way. And the breakfast reimbursement for a paid student, so if they're paying that $1.75 price, we get reimbursed 31 cents. Yeah. And for a paid student for a lunch, it's 33 cents. So it's
Yeah, minimal.
significantly low. So.
Gina shared with me today that she priced out a normal elementary breakfast that we're serving right now, based on the prices we have, and the cost of just the meal was $1.51. So we're not even talking about labor yet. And so, we're at $1.50 right now, so there's no way we can continue that. So we
Right.
need, and the same thing is with the lunch prices, the same example that she has for a normal lunch.
And you know what I didn't even mention about that I forgot? I didn't even put in like the cost of a spoon to eat the yogurt, or a cost of a piece of foil that we would wrap the breakfast sandwich in.
Just the meal, just the
it was
food.
literally the raw food cost was $1.
So are we gonna be losing money on these prices then? or
No, we will not, but the food cost, the food cost is,
Increased?
it's very high. It's
But
about
was I
77%,
hearing you right
which
that
is a lot.
the reimbursement rate from the federal government was a lot less than what our costs were then, right? Is that what you were saying?
For a paid meal.
Okay,
So
I guess I
for,
understand.
so
Not subsidized.
for a student, not subsidized, so a free meal, we're getting $4.62, and for a paid meal, it's 30-some cents.
So in addition to what they're paying, you get 31 cents on top of that?
Correct.
Okay.
So it will balance out hopefully with our free and
Would
reduced
that
students.
almost imply that they think that the price should be $4 and you should be charging 31 cents less than that $4 to make it at the $4 or what?
Well, there's a formula that we are technically required to do every year. It's called the paid meal equity tool, to make sure that we are charging enough to cover what the costs are and that you're not using any of the extra funds for anything else. However, that tool has not been released yet, so it's a little bit difficult to even kind of grasp where we're at, and I check literally weekly to see if it's available, and it's not. But I think we are on track with a lot of what our neighboring districts are charging, which I think is a very important and valid point right now, so that we're kind of all in the same, we're kind of charging the same thing. So the tech school already charges $3.25 for a lunch. Palisades is at $3.15. I'm not sure what they're doing for next year. North Penn is at $3.25, and Quakertown is middle school is $3.25, and high school they charge $3.35. So I think we're
In the ballpark.
in the same ballpark as everybody else. Any other questions, concerns?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
School bus replacements.
Yes, Mrs. Kraus is here to talk about that this year.
Alright, so we're going to request to go out to bid this year again. Just a little update from this past year. We had 80 homeschool routes. That is down from the 95 the year before. 45 homeless foster students, 48 work studies, 10 late buses, so that included 3 420 buses. We only serviced the middle school for those this year. We had 3 5 o'clock buses that goes between the middle schools and the high school. And then the 4 buses there for BTB is Beyond the Bell. Okay. We did about 390 athletic and contest and practices for athletics, 262 field trips this year, and we plan to have 21 summer school routes this year. So our fleet update. Currently we have 75 full-size buses, 1 48 passenger. We have 20 mini buses, which are 28 to 30 passengers, 11 wheelchair buses, and 10 vans. Our current fleet usage, we're using 80 of the route vehicles every day. We have spare vehicles 30, and that number is excess due to reducing 15 routes. But most of those buses are small buses. We have 1 security van, we have 6 sports vehicles, and 1 training vehicle. Current fleet age is 59%. So 59% of our fleet is less than 10 years old. Last year, I believe it was 66%. So we've reduced purchasing from 8 buses down to about 5 buses per year now. So that is why we've got some of that percentage decrease. But we're still doing not too bad as far as our bus age. You know, we've got the majority of our buses are between that 5 to 14 years, but you'll see we've got 51 buses now that are new to 4 years old.
That's awesome.
That's great.
We did get our 5 new buses finally about a month or so ago, and they'll be on full display tomorrow evening on the last ride up to graduation. There'll be 14 of those buses going up. Only 5 of those are brand new, but we're trying to get all of our new ones to go flashy up there.
Wait, who gets on the 5 new ones?
Depends on who's driving and what they're assigned to.
Oh, I'm not driving.
So we break down our mileage for you guys every year. We have 30 vehicles that are less than 50,000 miles. So you'll notice that those 45 new buses, 15 of them are already up over that 50,000 miles. And we only have 6 buses left in the fleet that are over 250,000 miles. So we were down a little bit last year, but we're up this year because of the reduced number of buses coming in. So this is our current replacement plan for this coming bid that we'd like to go out to board. So with the $500,000, we've typically been getting 5 buses, okay? So we, again, this year, instead of the $550,000, we asked for $500,000 in our budget because we didn't need vans, so that's why we reduced the $50,000. When we started inquiring about the new cost of buses, they've been, around 96, 98, and they've only been going up $1,000 to $2,000 a year. Well, they have jumped significantly to $115,000 for a full-size bus. And then, so we're asking to replace 4 buses with that dollar amount this year. One of those buses, we would like to replace a minibus and purchase a large wheelchair bus. So our large wheelchair buses, we could put another one on a route, but we can't because we only have 1 spare. So that's why we'd like to exit a minibus and get the wheelchair bus. They're going average around $126,000 to $130,000, and that is mostly because of the hydraulic lift and the additional equipment, track flooring, those kinds of things add the additional cost. So we would like to replace 2 of the buses. Bus 22 is a bus that we currently have in the fleet that we would like to replace. 115 is the minibus that we would currently like to replace with the wheelchair bus. Bus 83, and we haven't really done this in the past, but 83 is already gone, but we would like to replace that. So 83 was one that we were going to put out for bid to go out this year as a replacement bus. We had an engine go down in one of our other buses that's going to be in the fleet for quite some time. When we priced that engine, it was going to cost us $16,000 to replace the engine, and that was just for the engine. That wasn't even labor included yet. And as you know, when we send these buses out for trade value, one of the highest values I think we've got was like $3,500.
Yeah.
So for us, we decided to take the good engine from that bus, put it into the bus that's going to stay in the fleet, send 83 out to scrap. So we basically got $16,000 for that bus instead of $3,500. So that bus is gone, but we do need to replace it for a spare bus. And then bus 89, that was not scheduled to go out, but it was involved in a collision and the vehicle was totaled. So the insurance company owns that vehicle. We did get some money back, which went into this year's budget, so that'll carry over. But we would like to replace that vehicle. So replacing, yes, but only 2 are actually going to go out as trains, if that makes sense.
Well, if you had so the 2, sorry, I don't understand this, but the last 2 we're not paying, at least the last one that we got insurance money for, it's really not, it's added to the $500,000 budget that you had asked for then, right? Or?
No, because that money comes in now on this current year's budget. This is going to be next year's budget,
So what happens with that money that was, normally with most cars, you get the insurance money, you use it to buy a new car. Typically if your car gets totaled and you have it insured, you're gonna use those funds to purchase a replacement vehicle. Why is that
So
not
it's
the
a
case?
2009 vehicle, and it's, I think we may have gotten,
About $17,500.
$17,000,
Yeah,
$17,500.
gotcha.
So that's nowhere near enough to
Cover that.
replace $115,000 vehicle.
And then the other thing is, you mentioned before, I think we have 6 vehicles that have 250,000 miles or more, but none of those vehicles are on there for replacement. So what's the indicator as to when a vehicle, if it's not miles, what's the indicator?
So we also look at what are our best running vehicles, which vehicles are costing us a lot in maintenance, that sort of thing. So 22 is really on its last leg. 115 is a minibus that we're not using, and it's an older vehicle. The reason why that mileage is not going up is because we've not had
Been
need
using
for
it,
that
okay.
vehicle. So that's why we want to replace that with the wheelchair bus.
When you say engine 16K, you mean the engine has 16,000 miles on it, or the engine was worth
No.
$16,000?
So there was another bus that's gonna be on our fleet for many years to come, and that engine went. So we took the cost, we priced out that engine to replace it, and it would have cost us $16,000 to replace that engine.
Yeah, I just wonder why it's in the mileage section.
Because 83, the physical condition of the bus is not that great, and it was planning to go out this year anyway, but the engine was good. So we took that engine and placed it into the bus that's going to stay in our fleet for a long time. So 83 would have gone out this year, and we may have possibly gotten $3,500 for it. So rather than giving that engine away for $3,500, that we were gonna pay $16,000 for the engine to replace the other vehicle, we took it from this vehicle and put it into the other one. And then this is just a sample of what we might be looking at for next year. You'll see there's some of our buses. They're still good running, but the mileage are getting high. This is what we're looking at projecting for next year. Whether that comes to fruition next year or not, we're really gonna be looking to right-size our fleet as well with the additional, we're gonna be doing a lot of routing this year to see if we can possibly reduce any routes, or really don't think so, but it's always worth a try, right? So we'll be introducing that again next year, but that would be our plan for 5, and of course, we'll be asking for more than 500,000 next year.
Sean, don't make it happen. We're gonna try.
Any questions?
No, I'm good, thank you. I've been watching the fleet
Thank
for a
you.
couple of years, and I think it's going, I mean, we're in a great situation.
The fleet's looking very nice.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cross. Good night.
Good night.
Esther's report.
Dr. Robarczyk, Dr. Shaw.
Good evening. Good evening.
The clicker's over there on that side, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Donovan.
Just waiting for the other hand toss to see if we can catch her.
So Dr. Shoddy and I have the honor of presenting today an update on the funding we've been using through the American Rescue Plan for our learning loss. So as you can imagine, the plan is ever, a moving target in regards to, what we're using the money for, and then ideas that come up throughout the year that we'll be talking about towards the end of the presentation. So for the Beyond the Bell, which was presented way back, I think this was September or August, we talked about it. It's an elementary extended learning program. We were able to get it up and running at 5 of the 7 elementary schools. You can see Bedminster, Siler, Sellersville, Grass, and Guth. And from that, we spent, so this is where you look at the numbers and go, okay, you had some reality set in and what you were actually going to budget and then what you spent. We only spent $440 on supplies because a lot of the materials we had in the schools already. It wasn't anything, we thought we were going to be buying additional resources, but really the programs we had in place were more beneficial to use, and you'll see that in the presentation. And then a lot of the parents really just stepped up and donated supplies to each of the buildings that ran the program. Of the 5 schools, of the salaries and benefits we paid was $36,841. That is a combination of both teachers and teaching assistants. And we had some combinations at each of the buildings. Originally, we had put in the transportation of $50,000 a year to transport students to and from the program, from the program at the end of the day. Well, 2 of our schools ended up doing a morning program because we couldn't get afternoon personnel to support the program at that time. And then as we went on, we also learned through the federal government that transportation was no longer part of your learning loss money. So we had to take that money out of the actual learning loss piece, and we will move that into the regular ESSERS fund. We had some really, varied use of the program. Some schools were very targeted in regards to a specific grade, others kind of opened it up. But you can see each of the buildings, the number of students, the number of staff that that staff the programs, and the dates they ran on. You can see Tuesdays and Thursdays after school, or Tuesdays, Wednesdays before school. So as I said, 2 of them did it before school, the other 3 did it after school. And then the student growth. They, small group instruction using the Freckle program, which is again one of the programs we purchased through Learning Loss. So they had the resources that they didn't originally think they were going to use, but it ended up being a benefit. A lot of them just focused on the math and reading skills overall. Again, as part of the information, the number of students, the STAR reading at Bedminster, 10 of the 13 students demonstrated growth as part of coming to the program, and they assessed them pre and post. Grast used the Math Lincoln assessment as part of our data warehouse, and 9 out of those 10 students made growth. They also used the CDT as a point of data. 4 out of the 7 students made growth in the CDT. And our Fontes and Pinnell, which is our reading level assessment, you can see 11 out of 15 made growth. And then Seiler, they used the Fontes and Pinnell overall. They had really good results. They just targeted on the reading and the comprehension component, and 30 out of 31 students made growth on the assessment.
That's great percentages in terms of the students who were struggling and showing some growth as
Right.
a result of
So
these programs.
that's what I
That's
liked
wonderful.
about the smaller numbers, because I was concerned at first that there was only 13 or 17 or 20, but really they really hit home to the students who really needed that reinforcement, and may have lost from that time of being during COVID. And then Sellersville, again, they ran their program a little bit different. They focused specifically on 2nd grade math and 2nd grade students. So they showed improvement of 65% of their unit assessments to an 86%. Improved on the 2nd grade standardized numbers and operations probe from 66 to 78%. And then the 2nd grade cumulative pretest to the end of the year test from 64% to 88%. So some really good numbers to show that growth occurred. I apologize for that last block. Don't know what happened to the spacing there, but sometimes when you convert these presentations, they get a little wacky. But for Guth, 13 students, the 13 students they had that they were supporting in the program all grew on their STAR assessment. That STAR assessment is the one that's tied to Freckle. And it's really a nice assessment because it's truly aligned with the standards, so they can really get a good understanding of where the students' specific needs are, and then the program grows with the student. So when they're doing the blended learning lessons, the skills that are set up for them are based solely on their pre-assessment, and drives home at what their needs are.
And all the elementary schools have the STAR?
All of them, yes.
Okay.
They have all of them have the STAR and Freckle. They have access to the STAR reading and math assessment. The math component is where we focused our attention in regards to purchasing the program,
Okay,
and we're now exploring the RELA piece of it.
okay.
So we did some, I'll say, trial use of it in a couple of our elementary schools and had really good results. And we focused on our students who were coming out of child study to use the RELA component, and they really did show some positive results from it. So.
Dr. Rabarcha, can I just take a step back, just so for my own understanding, but were we given a certain amount of money that we had to utilize, or did we develop a plan and then we're reimbursed with a grant for what we did? Which comes first?
Sure, I know, I mean, you weren't here
Right.
prior to. So we were given an amount of just over $5 million. It was a grant, you had to complete all the steps to the grant. You were guaranteed the money as long as you completed your grant and submitted it the way you should have. And then 20% of that $5 million had to be focused on learning loss, specifically learning loss to students from whether it be COVID or just because of the shutdowns and everything else that kind of came into play throughout the last 2 years. So that just over $1 million is associated with the learning loss piece, and you have to demonstrate that you're using that money for learning loss. I had originally brought this presentation to the board prior to when you were on it, and it had to be basically approved that this was the way to go. And then you submitted it to the federal government, and then we had approval of the grant.
But then, why do we identify, and you said this at the beginning, only 13 students say in one school, as opposed to learning loss across the whole spectrum of the students, like.
Right, because this was the opportunity to dive in deeper. This is outside the school day and everything, so
Uh-huh.
this is parent permission
Right, right.
of allowing
So
their
it's really
child-
just parent participation as opposed to identifying a student saying you need this particular help and go from
We've
there.
identified and we sent home the permission saying we'd like to provide this remediation for your child. Some of them went along with it. Now,
Right, right.
now Sellersville, they looked at all their data. A lot of, this was all really data driven. So they looked at their math assessments and really honed in on second grade, because those are the students who really had a loss over that time,
Mhm.
coming from kindergarten, first
Sure.
grade into second. So that's why they specifically went that route.
So they did the whole second grade as opposed to just select students.
Well, they chose 12 students
Students
of
of the
that second grade who were demonstrating
Okay.
that they were really in need of that remediation.
And did the ESSER funds have to be used after school, or that was just the way we designed it?
That's the way we designed it.
Okay.
And I'm gonna talk a little bit at the end of the presentation about ideas to consider, because $1 million, you don't think,
Right,
it
right.
looks like, sounds like a lot, but when you start getting into it,
Okay.
it's a lot of money. And that's one of the things we're gonna have to talk about more, is how we're gonna move forward. Because like I said, they changed some of the rules, as Mr. Talbert knows, as you were going along. Like, we presented in September, I believe,
Yeah.
and then we found out in December that nurses, transportation were no longer allowed as part of your learning loss, so you had to kind of shift some funds around. So there's reporting that occurs every year as well. So there's a system called eGrants that the applications go through, that there are reportings that you have to do there for performance, as well as your financial reporting that occurs through our PIMS. What is the acronym for PIMS? It's the, I'm trying to think. Mr. Alexander.
Pennsylvania Information Management System.
There you go. I couldn't get it out. But the Pennsylvania Information Management System contains the financial reporting that you have to submit each year. So we just completed our submission for 2020, 2021 in the use of the funds. Come October, we're going to now have to report on 21, 22.
And these funds are available through September of '24, so it basically covers 3 full school years. And this is just one of the programs, because I actually think the next slide actually shows some of the things that you're talking about that provide remediation to
Everybody, yeah.
everybody.
Yes.
Right, so, because there
Right,
are
this was
targeted,
just the
there's
elementary
both.
idea that came across to how can we kind of target in on some of those kids who have really demonstrated a learning loss.
See, this money came out of the American Rescue Plan.
Uh-huh.
Everything came fast, and the rules came a long time after it. So really, as we were as we were trying to do this, USDE and PDE were building a plane while we were trying to fly it.
Mhm.
And we were really trying to figure out, we would talk about, Dr. Robarczyk and his staff would talk about things to do, and then the rules would come out. So it was really a difficult, frustrating time period trying to find out what we could and couldn't use this money for. And really, they're still making the rules up.
Even the financial reporting process, we got to the date where we completed it, and literally 2 days before we changed the template a little bit. It's like a typical kind of, communication that comes out, but you fly with it, and you make your adjustments, and it works. But it is kind of building the plane in midair to some degree.
So that $5 million is being spread out over through
Yes.
2024.
2024.
Correct.
And then what happens with, like the Star Freckle is a subscription and like 3 years, so what happens when that ends and then the 2024, I guess we just regroup and see if that continues?
Right, so there's a couple things that can happen. One, it could just go away because it's addressed your learning loss.
Right.
Or two, you can find a way to kind of offset the different costs that you've been using for other things that you're not using now and see if you can make it work. Or maybe you're taking a smaller part of the Freckle component and buying that subscription where it's not $150,000 any longer, but maybe it's $27,000, and it'll work for the kids that you can assign certain licenses to. So.
There is with this money something we call the funding cliff. This goes back to 20 years ago, where the state and the federal government gave school districts a ton of money, and we got to that point. We funded a lot of positions with that, and the money ran out, and all the school districts fell off the cliff. And what they did, so many districts used the money for things that were ongoing, and then they were stuck and they didn't know how to go on. So it ended up many things, and people were cut at that point, or taxes were increased. So we had to, when we get these lump sums of money from the federal government, they're great. They want to throw money at education, and it's wonderful. We appreciate this money. But it puts us all in a very difficult position because we start and we ramp up programs, and then the money goes away. And then we have to figure out, okay, prioritize. What worked? What do we still need to do? What do we still want to do? And how do we
Get a funding source.
how do we get a funding source? How do we pay for that? So we try to be very careful about hiring a lot of people with this money, because it's one thing to stop a program or to not buy Freckle. It's another thing to tell someone you no longer have a job.
Sure.
So that's the difficult part. I mean, we celebrate the federal government giving us this money, but there is a downside to this at the other end, where we have to figure out how to move forward, because basically all that support goes away, and then local school board members are the ones that have to figure out how we move forward after it. So it is a balancing act.
And if I can just expand on that, the other difference between this money and like federal funds that we get through Title I is to supplement what you're doing. So like, we purchase Lexia licenses, which is a blended learning RELA program for students to practice their RELAs, their reading and comprehension and word skills, right? This can be used to supplant, meaning it's something that exists in your district already. You can use the money to help supplant, to continue those efforts. So it makes it a little bit different in that sense, that it doesn't restrict us from only having to add things that we never had, but we can actually address things that we have, we want to continue maintain, that we feel is a good product to our district. So, and you'll see that in the slides when I get further considerations. But I just wanted to explain that that's a little different than the traditional Title I funds that I talked about in the past. So the remediation supplies and materials that we purchased, the Fontes and Pinnell kits. The Fontes and Pinnell came out with new reading assessment kits. And so this is where that supplant kind of falls into place, because we had Fontes and Pinnell kits, but we have the outdated ones. So this allows us to purchase the new ones that are needed to maintain with the updated version. So in this school year, we purchased half of the kits that we needed, because we didn't think there was a major change, but then we found out there was more of a change than we anticipated. So for other purchases to consider, we'll be moving forward to purchase the other half of the kits needed for across the district at the elementary level. Again, then the Star Freckle piece, the 3-year subscription, that's actually $150,000 total, not a year. I don't want to win the bank there. But we spent $50,000 this school year, towards the Star Freckle. It's a subscription that pretty much gives you the assessment and the blended learning licenses for every student across the district. So to your point, Mr. Russell, yes, we're using it for the Beyond the Bell, but every student's be able to take advantage of using that program during their small group instruction during math time or EI time. And then there's the RELA IXL program in 7th and 8th grade that we've been using. That's $7,000 a year we paid for this year. And then the Mystery Science and Scholastic World, which are extensions to our science programs. It's helped students to go beyond just what's in the textbook and go into the topic deeper. That was $4,700, and we'll be spending that for the next couple of years. So we're up to $76,000 for the school year currently on the materials and supplies. And again, here's like the Fontes and Pinnell kits, grades K to 2 and then 3 to 8. They are by level, so we separated it out. But they're the benchmark assessments that we use. And this is an assessment we use 3 times a year with our K to 5 students to be accurately collect data to see where their reading achievement and growth occurs. There's the Star Freckle. Again, this year we had 1,905 students use the product, which is pretty much all our elementary students. And of the 1,905, we demonstrated growth in 1,392 of the students, which is nice to see. This was the RELA IXL program. So this is a little different. This doesn't show really a growth pattern or anything. Each of the students are using it across 7th and 8th grade in the RELA classrooms at the 3 middle schools. So they have questions. So it's a practice skill that they're already teaching in the classroom. So it shows you the number of questions they answered, 40 and 47,000. The skills that were practiced, over 17 and 1,500 skills. The skills they were proficient, and the skills mastered. So our goal as we move forward is to continue to see those skills proficient and skills mastered as we move forward in using the program. I keep hitting this, sorry. Okay. There we go. Okay, so additional staffing, as Mr. Dahmer explained, this is the hard part about using the funds for staffing, because you get to a point where you may not need that staffing anymore, and you would have to decide how to, whether through attrition or furlough, and luckily we're not in that position. We have one elementary cyber liaison person who helped to support our 51 students who were in the cyber program, the Penridge cyber program, not outside the district. Just stay connected to their elementary schools. She ran small groups. She helped facilitate remediation on the skills they were learning through the cyber program. And so next year, that program, that position will not exist because our enrollment in the cyber program has continued to go down. And we expect next year that it'll be going down even further. So those students will be able to be supported through the STRIDE program as they were this year, but we won't need that additional person. And then we have a 6th section at the high school and middle school for cyber liaisons. And you can see down below, the high school supported 118 students that were in the cyber program, and in the middle school, 44 students. We had an English language department teaching assistant that we hired this year to support 12 to 15 students impacted daily at the North Middle School?
Yes.
North Middle School. So that teacher was helping those students navigate through their courses, provide additional support from what they were learning in their classroom, whether it be the EL class or their regular core classes.
English language learners.
English language learner, yeah. And then we had a high school teacher in the English language learner department. The teacher we just identified in May, so this is where one of those ones we kept looking for somebody, but we couldn't find anyone. But they were just hired in May, so they are now helping to support 10 to 15 students at the high school currently, and they'll be taking on more in their caseload as they move forward. And then we have our high school data-based instructional teacher, who has been supporting basically all our high school students. And that is Stacy Clemmer. You met her before. She was here to share the presentation on the rankings. So she's kind of our data guru at the high school level, and really works with classroom teachers and then directly with students and helping them based on their data to support them and helping them move forward. So in this school year alone, we spent $219,557,000. So our summer programs is also part of our learning loss, and we've allotted money towards these programs. So we have our extended school year, which is our special education programming. And you can see we spent $99,166 last summer. For our elementary summer program, $88,000 and change. And then our English language learners program, $7,832. So you can see, again, we place some numbers up there per year. Obviously, we'll adjust those as we move forward and come up with the other ideas of what we'll need. Because of that $435,000 a year, $300,000 per year, $42,000 per year. Transportation was originally part of that cost, which can no longer be. The nurse was part of that cost, can no longer be. So there were reasons why those numbers came in so low. But we spent just about $195,798 in this past year. So additional resources to consider that we're looking at now. There's a program called Legends of Learning that Mr. Vogel has brought forward, and it wants to look at it for this summer as a kind of a trial with students that are in our summer program. It's a math blended learning program that will complement the Freckle program that they're working on. It's more of a problem solving type of blended learning, so he's really excited about it, wants to try it out, and it's only $1,000, so it's a good opportunity to take advantage and see how our students do, because the students that are coming to our elementary summer program are struggling the most with their reading comprehension and those type of skills, so it'll be a benefit to them. We're looking at considering the full-day kindergarten, the targeted full-day kindergarten teacher, the teaching assistants, and the supplies. Again, this is where you show where it supplants into, because we started it last year with the targeted full-day program at Sellersville. We're expanding it now to West Rock Hill and Guth, and our goal would be next year to expand that further into the other elementary schools that would not have a full-day program at that time. So we put an anticipated amount of salaries and benefits along with supplies of starting up that new classroom. And then again, there was the Fontes and Pinnell assessment kits. As previously said, we need to buy the other half now to get them all updated for the teachers to have in their classrooms. And then talking to Mr. Danny in regards to the elementary science program, our kits are really starting to get older, and the supplies in them are just becoming obsolete, so we need to buy some new supplies. So we're looking at refreshing our elementary science supplies possibly, and that would be a total cost of $250,000 or so. We haven't mapped out everything on that, but we put a kind of a guesstimate based on the cost of the kits and the supplies that come from Carolina Biological. And then First in Math is kind of an anomaly out there. First in Math is a program for students to practice their math skills, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. And right now, the federal government is actually looking to pass a bill to pay for it for every school across the United States. But if they don't, we put the $25,000 in there, and just to be kind of safe. So we will see. We're hoping by July we'll know where they stand in the position of passing that. It's part of a larger bill. So we'll see if they kind of pick that one out. It's actually part of that USDA, Sean, for all the lunches and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if they'll do anything with it, but we'll see. And then other expenditures to address learning loss that we took advantage of this year. Our foundations at the lower level, the professional development for that program. That's our phonics program at the kindergarten and first grade levels. So we are expanding our foundations this coming year into first grade. So this is an opportunity to use that to address the learning loss of those students and be able to give them a phonics expanded beyond kindergarten. Our Beyond the Bell, that was, minor there. You can see 126 in supplies, $2,542 in refreshments, which we ended up getting a lot more donations than anything else. We're looking at Math Thinker Plus, and this is again associated with a problem-solving program that Mr. Vogel wants to look at to expand into the everyday classroom at the elementary level. Webinars for parents for Edgenuity to get them on board with learning about Edgenuity a little bit more, and that's just a $625 cost. Fontes and Pinnell supplies, additional, these are the folders that every student carries a folder as they go through their elementary career, that the tests are kept in, the results and everything, and it goes from teacher to teacher. So it's kind of like just a permanent record file that goes with the student, but you need a new supply of them each year for the incoming kindergarten class. With Linkit, we expanded in using the Intervention Manager for Students, which is a program to group students to look at basically looking at their data and then putting them into a category so we can look at the data a lot easier to determine our grouping in classrooms as we're looking at math and reading. Our occupational therapy supplies, we looked at a handwriting program actually. I know it's kind of handwriting, everyone goes, wait, handwriting. But this was more of an intervention by our occupational therapist that worked with targeted students at the elementary level and kindergarten and first grade. We had some great results. I'd love to share those results with you at a later time, but it was really great to see the progress that the students made, and it's very particular that the OT therapist pushed into the class during their writing sessions and then also did a small pull-out group during their EI. so she didn't disrupt any of the core instruction time. And then special education teacher, we had students who were still remote, obviously, and we had to conduct progress monitoring to maintain their growth and evaluation based on their goals. So that money was set aside to allow for that. So the overview of the costs are beyond the bell. This is what we had originally put into place here. The $534,000, supplies and $200,000, additional staff, $990,000, and summer programming, $2 million plus and change, and then the overall total of $4 million. So we are going to be adjusting that number. Obviously, our learning loss number only has to be $1 million. We originally targeted the $4 million that we are going to use. So that will be reduced considerably.
And if we don't use the full 5, then we have to send it back?
We do not have to send it back. It just has to go into a different, I'll call it a stockpile of funding that can be used for other things that aren't associated with learning loss. So our total allocation was the $5,063,35. That minimum of the 20%, just over $1 million. Total spent on the learning loss, like I said, was just over $4 million if we hold to that number, based on everything that was addressed. And then the time frame, again, as Dr. Bolton mentioned, September 30th of 2024. So our next steps, well, the 6-month review of the Penridge District Health and Safety Plan, which you did tonight, appreciate it. And we'll bring that again around November again, just to make sure we stay within that 6-month period. I know it's a little earlier, I heard that. And so stakeholder meeting to update the American Rescue Plan learning loss considerations. Carden, the key piece of this American Rescue Plan is that you have to have stakeholders involved. Beyond just your school board or teachers, you have to bring public members into have discussions about the considerations. So that kindergarten teacher piece for the targeted full day kindergarten, additional fundus and Pinnell kits, I'll share that with the group when we meet as a stakeholder group, and then they can also share any other ideas that they may have based on their own child's experience or what they're hearing in the community, what you hear. So, you may get an invitation to be part of that if you're available. We're looking to do that at the end of June. And then we will update our American Rescue Plan learning loss plan, and it'll be on the district website because you have to have it posted for everyone to see. So, any questions, comments?
It's all good.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Final general fund budget. That's gotta be Sean.
Yes, item 5 on the agenda is the final general fund budget for fiscal year 22-23. Revenues and expenditures of $149,500,094. And we will set the real estate tax millage rate at 135.2555 mils, which is the same as the last 6 or so years. So,
How many years was that?
about 6.
I stole it from Dr.
So we didn't
Bolton.
raise taxes?
No, we didn't. How many years? That's 6. Yeah. So we'll ask your approval for that final budget document. It is in your board docs. It's the state budget document. And we have not made any changes to the budget since you passed it in May, so perfect. Okay? Next, item number 6. Again, this goes along with the budget, levying of the taxes, which include a 1% earned income tax, a 0.5% of real estate transfer tax, and a $5 local services tax. They are the statutory tax rates that you are allowed to put in place, and they're the same rates that have been put in place for many, many, many years. So there's no changes there at all. Number 7, the 2022 homestead and farmstead exemption or exclusion resolution. This year, this has gone up a little bit. Normally, our amount of reduction on each tax bill that qualifies is about $200. This year, our taxpayers will see about $257 in reduction in taxes. So,
And again, that reduction is then offset by money that we receive from the state.
yes, yep, it is the gambling revenue, gambling money.
And I remember the data indicated that it was just over 2/3 of our families benefit from this in some form in terms of the parcels,
Correct.
right? Which means those approximately 2/3 of our families are actually seeing a tax decrease for this year.
We have about 11,650 homestead properties, you're correct, and 126 farmstead properties.
That's just wonderful.
That's awesome. The next item is number 8, set installment dates. This is the installment dates for people to pay their real estate taxes. Each year, they're August 31st, October 31st, and December 15th are the 3 installment dates. The next item is commitment of funds for the year ending 21-22. So basically what the board needs to do each June is set the fund balance amount moving forward for the end of the fiscal year. Currently, the unassigned fund balance is $9,934,339. That is 6.64% of our budget, and the statutory limit is 8%. We have a committed fund balance for PESERS of $6,041,781. This is my recommendation or suggestion to you as a board that you set the PESERS commitment fund balance at $2,025,661 and set the unassigned fund balance at $11,960,000, which is 7.99% of the budget. And I'm sorry. You would be reducing the PESERS fund balance by $2,025,661. It would then be set at $4,016,120.
And this is that fund, the PESERS fund is what we talked about last month. And so this is the attempt to be able to lower that amount.
Correct.
Right, and be able to have our checking account to make sure that there is emergency money in terms of the uncommitted fund balance and get us close to that 8%, which is allowed. So
Yes.
that's-
And just for a little bit of information, in the last 10 years, Pennsylvania school district spending overall has increased $8 billion in 10 years. So school districts have increased spending by $8 billion. $5 billion, or 64% of that, have been for mandated costs, which we have no control over at all. And those mandated costs are pensions and charter school costs. So we have no control over that, but that is just the rate of growth of those mandated costs in 10 years. That's the reason why I'm always saying, please make sure that we maintain our fund balances, because we don't know what's out in front of us, and we need to be ready to react. And so we don't want to spend all our fund balances or use all our fund balances. We want to try to maintain that healthy fund balance so that the district's in a financial position and it can react to things like this.
We can't be more than 8, so you were at 799, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just for the unassigned.
Right, right.
So I would like to see, I think it's recommended that adjustment into the unassigned fund balance. And then you can react as needed. You'll
Sure.
use that, what,
Especially over the next 3 years where it's tighter, right before we get to that
yes.
next section, right?
Yes, yes, sir. And also, everything that I've been reading from an economic standpoint is very scary about global recession, global slowdown in the economy globally, and not just and the impacts of the oil costs, and the impacts on the food and everything, global supply chain impacts and so forth. Is really going to slow down the global economy in the next few years. So that's for what it's worth.
No, it makes sense. Sean.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. The next item, number 10, this is our renewal quotes from our insurance broker, Willis Towers. Again, here you're seeing what we've been talking about with everything about being hit with price increases and so forth. The insurance market right now is a very hard insurance market. Costs are up on insurance. Reinsurance costs are extremely high because of the weather disasters over the last number of years. And we have actually had a number of big claims hit us in the last few years that are driving our rates. So all those things, plus with the economy and with the cost, the replacement cost and the values of what it would now cost if we lost the building, all that is driving up insurance rates. So we're seeing in our general property and general liability, an increase from 455 to 480,000. That's the biggest increase. Now, we do have these numbers budgeted. We actually what is in the budget is more than this, because we had an estimate that was higher than where they actually came in. So we're okay budget-wise, but I just want to show you the impacts of what's happening out there to us as far as insurance. Our insurance, our boiler machinery, from 19,004 up to 21,000. Our commercial umbrella liability actually went down. We'll be at 45,492. This year it's 46,900. Our school leaders liability up about $4,000. Here's a big one, our cyber liability insurance. This is one that we worked very hard to actually be able to get insurance. Many districts the companies just aren't quoting them. We're implementing MFA, multi-factor authentication, all the things that Mrs. Miller came and talked to you about. All those things we're talking to the insurance company about that we're doing and putting in place, and we're showing them evidence and so forth. And we're able to actually get insurance, but you can see that increase from 27,700 up to 47. I think 3 years ago this insurance was under $10,000, but just the explosion of the attacks, the cyber attacks on just everyone, not just school districts, but everyone. Our brokers went out to 13 different companies for cyber insurance. The lowest that came back was our current carrier, but all of those companies had higher premiums and higher retention rates, so the deductibles were higher. This does come with an increase in deductible, but it is the best that we could get on the market, and we cannot go without cyber insurance. We're just doing everything that the insurance companies asked us to do as far as putting protections in place. And we'll be working all summer on the endpoint protections. We'll be working on continuing to push the MFA, the multi-factor authentication, out. The next group that's going to get it is the cabinet, and then the principals in Act 93 will get it this summer, and then more people will get it when they come back in the fall. So it's just going to be a continual process for that. And then the last is the pollution coverage. That's up a little bit, 18.3 compared to 17.7. And then the student accident insurance is a flat. It's 36.7. It's the same amount as this year. So that's where the insurance is. And unfortunately, it's the same story with everything we've been looking at. Yeah, it's happening. So. Okay. All right, so the next group I have is the contracts, and I have a lot of contracts this month because it is June. And June, we have a lot of stuff we're setting up for next year. The first three are Valley Forge Educational Services. The first one is Extended School Year Services for student number 23. Cost is $7,500, so that's for that student summer program. B is the same thing, student number 29, program for this summer. Both of those have a cost of $7,500. The letter C, this is services for student number 24, but this is for next year. $70,212 is the tuition cost for that student at Valley Forge. The next one is Lakeside Youth Services. This is a renewal of our annual contract. We have 8 special education slots this year, cost of $316,000. That's a reduction from last year, which was $450,000. We have less slots. We have 5.6 in-school counselors. The cost is $496,000. It was $438,000 this year. Our total is $812,000 for next year. Current year it's $889,000. So we do have a reduction in this overall total contract. The next one is LearnWell. LearnWell is for students that are placed in the medical facility. First one is student number 22. Cost is $50.25. Letter F, again, that's student number 25. Again, that cost is $50.25 per hour. G, again, the same thing, student number 26, and that cost is $50.25 per hour. And again, those are students that are placed in medical facilities, and we are, as the home district, responsible for educating those students and paying for the cost of the education. The next, H, is Keystone Freedom Academy. This is educational services for students 30 and 31, 32 and 33. Cost is $246 per day, and that is for next school year. Next is Keystone Freedom Academy. This is an extended school year program this summer for student number 34, and the cost for that student's program is $5,250. Next two are CADES. These are both extended school year programs for this summer. First one is student 35. Cost of that program is $4,247. And then the second one is student number 36. And the cost for that summer program is $6,861. Next one is General Healthcare Resources. This is where we get contracted substitute nurses.
Can somebody just take a step back on this too, just to help me out? But we're required to pay for summer programming?
So,
And explain, just give me a.
So both of these are students who require extended school year and require summer, and their needs are more than can be handled in our summer program.
Okay.
And so these two would be there. They are either going to be, I know the status for both these students, but these CADES programs, some of them will be students that we have in placements. And so we've worked through the IEP process and we've decided that an outside placement is appropriate. There could be others that would be settlements where previous settlements have required extended school year services, and this is the great place. This is actually one of each of those. And so one of these is a settlement that has been approved in the past, and this summer is part of that. The other one is a student who's currently placed in a program, and that IEP requires summer programming. And so CADES is the appropriate place for that to be.
And how long does a student, say from the medical standpoint, are you out, say if somebody's injured in there, and how long is it before you have to say, hey, we need to assign somebody through LearnWell to go help them out?
Yeah, the first 10 days, depending on the situation, sometimes we know in advance it's going to be a long time injury. The general rule of thumb is the first 10 days, we make it work through the school system. And so depending on whether the student can, sometimes you're in a medical situation and you can do some schoolwork, sometimes you can't. Once you get beyond 10 days, there is that requirement to take a look at what extra can we do. And so whether that's providing a homebound tutor, but if they're in a medical placement, which is what these would be from a LearnWell standpoint, they have tutors that work with the students. It's generally a set number of hours per day on subjects that they're required to do. And so they actually get our work and they present it to the students, and that's what these costs are at LearnWell.
Thank you, Dr. Bowman.
Certainly.
We're on letter L. This General Healthcare Resources, this is the company we use for our substitute nurses and paraprofessionals when we're not able to find our own substitutes. The costs for next year, an RN is $60 an hour, LPN is $50 an hour, and a paraprofessional is $26 an hour, and those prices are outlined in the contract. Next is Dr. Davis. He provides student and bus driver physical exams. We have him on a retainer. Next year it costs $4,200. It is currently $3,250. He also gets $75 per bus driver physical. Current year it's $65, and $55 per student physical. Current year it's $40. They have asked for increases for the same reasons. Increased overhead, increased employee costs, increased turnover, and just all the same reasons that we see here with our employees. So
The next is the Grandview Hospital. The Upper Bucks Orthopedics provides medical coverage at home football games. So we'd like to renew that contract. That's $150 per home football game, and they are not asking for an increase. That's the same cost as this year. The next is Dr. Warner and Dr. Brooke Lewis, the next two. They both provide student dental exams. They both do it for $35 per hour, and that's the same cost as this year.
So what is the school required to provide in terms of medical and dental? So if you need a physical to play a sport, the student can go to Dr. Davis and we have to pay him $55, or how does that work?
So it would have to do with, there can be times where there's certain medical situations, but the normal would be a student who is on free or reduced lunch, and that there are financial concerns for the family, so then we do provide those services for the family. Same thing with the dental. And there are certain years where there are medical requirements by state law. I believe dental is 7th grade, right? And there's certain grade hurdles, and so that's where those services will be provided.
We'll put out a questionnaire to the parents and say, will you be providing your own dental exam to the school district, or do you need the district to provide one? And when they come back and say they need one, that's where these gentlemen come into play.
So if they need treatment, though, do we provide the treatment, or what? We just do the exam?
Correct. Just the physical exam. Yes.
Yep, that's a school code requirement. The next item is Q, and that's Dr. Cherry Durr's Professional Mentor Consulting Services Agreement at a maximum cost of $5,400 plus mileage, and that is from August through December of 2022. And we are waiting for the documentation from Mr. Miller so that we can give that to you. He's still working with that in between himself and Dr. Durr's counsel. So.
This is Dr. Durr being able to provide some mentorship on site for Mrs. Summers as she takes over the position for Director of Pupil Services.
Is that typical, like when kind of, I know like the Director of Pupil Services wears a ton of hats and they have a lot of different jobs. Is that typical, like how?
It is,
okay.
yeah, that you look for some sort of, and it, like you said, especially, it has to do with which positions, right? And so the Director of Pupil Services has so many different responsibilities that there aren't other experts in the district on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have somebody to be able to say, because Mrs. Summers has not, she's had the experience with some of the pieces, but not leading
Right.
all of those pieces.
Right.
And so it really is to get through the end of the calendar year and to provide a couple days a month maximum, where there can be somebody on site to kind of plan those big ticket items.
And it's just August through December?
It
correct?
is,
Okay.
yeah, yes, it is. It is 2 days through a month, August through November, actually, the end of November, and then one flex day to be able to do some sort of, I need 30 minutes here and there, and they can be by phone. But the other days will all be on site.
The next two letters R and S are both settlement agreements for student number 27 and student number 28. The next item, letter T, is our agreement with Kids Care to provide after-school care services within the district. We altered this agreement when COVID hit because the number of students that they had dropped considerably. And what we would like to do, what we did last year was we came to an agreement where we based last year's payment on a percentage of the year before COVID hit. So the year before COVID hit, we set that as the base year. They had 331 students that year. So last year, they paid based on a percentage. So each month, we got their enrollment and based the amount due on the percentage of that from that base year, plus the amount of they owe us for the rent charge. And we have used the rent charges that are in the current contract, and they go up each year. I believe next year it's $99 a day. And so what we would like to do is extend that agreement one more year. They have one more year left in the contract. Extend that one more year. If their enrollment goes up, continues to, goes back up closer to 330, it's a win for us. If it doesn't and it stays where it's at, I think we're being fair to them, based on their ability to make enough revenue to pay their staff and pay the district, so. Okay, I'd recommend we stick with that. The next one is this is the J. Cassis and Associates presenter for the Fall Professional Learning Day, October 10th, 2022. Cost is $13,500. The next one is Fuel Education. This is our online cyber courses for grades K to 12. This is for next fiscal year, and the course fees will not change from the current year. So we're looking to renew that contract so we have that service in place for any kids that remain in our cyber charter program.
And they are only expended if we use them.
Yes. Yep. The fees are only expended if we use them. Next one is Wilson Language. This is the Professional Learning and Teacher Support Compass Plan. This is for next year. The cost is $20,900, and this is an item that we use federal Title I funds for.
Is this, just to clarify, because I'm confusing it with, this is not the Wilson program, or this is the Wilson program, or is, when it says Wilson Language?
Right, this has to do with, Dr. Barczyk, so this does have to do with the Wilson program that you're talking about.
Okay.
And so this is the professional development piece of that
Got it.
for our staff.
Got it.
If you remember, I don't know if it's a year or 2 years, we've brought on our very own Wilson trained, because we were getting a lot of those services through the IU. Now, we still do receive some through the IU, but it is much less because we have an in-house person. And between that person and this training, we're training other teachers in terms of being able to use the program. Yeah.
I know it's like a lot of money, but I definitely believe in the program.
Yeah.
I've just seen a lot of growth. I know it's wonderful. Okay, I just wanted to.
Yep, no, it's a great question, thank you.
Okay, letter X, the Concord Theatricals musical agreement. This is for the South Middle School spring musical next year. The cost is $825, and the drama club account at the school pays for that. Next, Y, this is Crowd Pleasers DJ services. This is for North Middle School. They use this service every year. The cost is $1,600. This year it's $1,475. This is a student council paid item where they have their DJ for a number of dances and school programs and so forth. So. The next is Camp America Day Camp. This is for Siler Elementary School picnic. Next May, cost is $19 per person, and this is something that's parent paid. The contract is in order for that. The next item is Lenovo Financial Services. This is our leasing agreement for our high school 1-to-1 laptops. It is a 4-year lease that covers the term that the kids are 9th through 12th grade. The lease factor is 0.24968, and our annual payment will be $148,312.42. So actually, over the 4-year period, we pay less than what we're purchasing the computers for. Then the leasing company takes possession of the laptops after the 4th year, and then they do whatever they do with them. But at that point, they're out of our hair. Exactly. Next one is Johnson Controls Fire Protection. This is for CCTV and card access systems service agreement. This is a 3-year service agreement. Cost is $35,364 per year. It's fixed, and it's about a $3,400 increase over the current contract for these systems. The next one is another LearnWell that we got kind of late, so we added it on to the bottom. This is LearnWell Educational Services for student identified number 37. This is another $50.25 per hour, and this is for services that are currently in the current year. And then the last one is Navigate 360. This is our Alice e-learning renewal contract. So to renew that, God bless you. Cost is $11,677, and this contract is for the next fiscal year also.
Question was, because Alice e-learning, it's like the safety, the security that they
It
do.
is. Yeah, it's
Um,
one of them, yes.
It's one of them, sure.
Yeah.
So with, what all encompasses in that amount of money?
So primarily it is the online portion of it. It does also provide us, we have our own trainers that do, I believe, every 2 years have to get a renewal piece. That is part of that in terms of to
Okay.
recertify that they can provide the training of our own staff here.
Mhm.
But this is primarily the online piece in terms of our staff and having their reminder and the refresher of
Right.
the ALICE program for the safety.
Okay, that's it for that list of contracts.
Sorry, I'll just go back
Nope,
to, so, or
no
at least, mention it, is like the JCASAS. I know I was one that wanted to have more information on that for the professional development. And I guess, where I'm at on that, like when I ask questions about like the Wilson language and those programs, I feel like those are really great programs that can help close gaps and things like that, so I love all those kind of things with the professional development. The JCASAS thing, just looking into some of the things that he does, it feels more like looking at either social issues and things like that. So it's hard, I guess, for where I'm at, thinking of spending that amount of money on maybe somewhere where when we have those programs like the IXL or the Freckle, which I think are really great ones. And I only have experience with IXL with using it and teaching, but the Freckle I've loved with my kids. But sometimes I feel like as teachers, we get a lot of these awesome tools in our toolkit, but it's like, where can I use these throughout the day? So I guess I'm thinking of where more to use some, I don't know, to be more efficient with those professional development days. And I feel like maybe more of the academic part. Maybe you could speak more onto the JCASAS where you feel it would be very valuable.
I've seen Mr. Casas present 3 times, and they've all been similar presentations to the type of thing we're considering, although we're able to work with him to tailor our slide deck, so it is a slide deck that we'll see in advance and be able to make sure that it does fit our district goals. But really the 2 pieces that he speaks to that fit our district goals for next year directly and why we wanted to have him kind of as a keynote in October, one has to do with student engagement. In terms of that piece of how do you hook a student into what they're learning that day and every day from that standpoint, as well as then the emphasis on all staff, not just teaching staff, but all staff in terms of their impact on student achievement. And so they really are the 2. There are other talking points that he'll get at, but as you look at his presentation, those are kind of the 2 points. We use the keynote as a jumping off point because what that day will look like is it's divided into 4 pieces, where his presentation is one of those 4 pieces. And then there are some choice and some district directed other professional learnings that relate to those kinds of topics that are specific to our goals. And so then we can make it more specific for, okay, now elementary, primary teachers, what are they going to learn in sessions 2, 3, 4? Generally 2 of those are choice and 1 of those are directed by the district, although we haven't finalized those 3 sessions for the October plan, but we like to use that kickoff. It is motivational. It is in terms of having another voice in terms of getting them fired up.
Sure.
We find it's a good time of year because that craziness over the start of year and it's gotten into some level of routine and teachers have that capacity to now look at it and say, okay, now as I think about my goals for the year, I now have established my relationships with my students. How am I going to capitalize on that to be able to get their achievement, to get their engagement, and they're 2 of the areas. They're the things I'm excited about in terms of what I've seen from him. We've had positive reviews, both in terms of people that have seen them, but also districts we've talked to that have had him, because we haven't had him in as a whole district from that standpoint. Would love to share that slide deck with people once we have it, in terms of for the board to be able to see that, so you get a sense. Obviously, we'll invite you that day, but that'll be hard for you to be able to do that. So that's why we're excited about him. We looked at a few options, and that's one that we thought really would benefit our staff moving forward from that timing, from an October standpoint. So.
Okay, item number 12, that's the PSBA membership renewal. The cost for 22-23 is $16,194, and current year cost $15,840. So that's up a little bit, just like everything else we've talked about. Okay. The next number 13, I just want to get your approval for some bids that we put out. We put out bids for, and these are items. These are bids for kind of specialty supplies that we don't really have a state contract for, or a contract through the IU, that we're doing this as a group purchasing, where they're bidding it, and then the rest of the districts can jump on that. So these are actually ones that we put out our own bids for. And we do these every year. First is the technology educational supplies. We have 2 awards there, one to Metco and one to Pittsco. Second one is metal shop supplies. We have awards to Hoover Steel, Metco, and Paxton. Then we have our wood shop supplies, again, awards to Metco, Midwest, and Paxton. D is our lumber supplies, awards to Forest County Wood, Metco Supply, and TIG Lumber. I know I didn't say that right. And E is art supplies. We have the Art Supply Store, Blick Art Materials, Cascade School Supplies, and Freestyle Photo Supplies, Metco Supply, NASCO Education, National Art and School, Pyramid School, and Quill. And then the last one is music instruments. And we have awards to Catalano Musical Products, Cunningham Piano, K&S Music, and Washington Music. You have details of all that in your board docs, every item, and every amount from each bidder is there. The low costs are highlighted for you, and then there's a low bid column, and you can see the totals for each company and what each company is getting. So I didn't want to bore you by going through all of that. So if you have an interest in looking at that, you can look at that.
I know I won't be reading all those.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did have a question
Yes, sir.
on, sorry, just more philosophically, though. But all of these that we're getting for, are there fees that are charged then to the students? Is it like a lab fee or something, or is that better addressed by someone else other than you, Sean? Like you see the money. And then my follow-up question is, how do we make sure that students are able to participate that may not have the funds for that? Again, echoing the fact that we know that 1/3 of our student population is relying upon some sort of food assistance. You know, if you're relying upon food assistance, you're not going to have money to do a wood shop or a metal shop or a photography class that you might otherwise like to take. So how are we making sure that everybody's Penridge experience is consistent, whether or not they're disadvantaged because their family doesn't have the resources to be able to participate in that?
Right, right. I know there are certain courses at the high school level that do have a participation fee for supplies.
And some is not insignificant. I think it's been over $100 or something like that for, say, wood shop or.
Yeah, some of them, and when you get into the advanced wood shop, and these are all courses that are not mandatory, so these are electives.
Right.
So when you get into some of those elective programs and you choose what projects you're going to do, then the student does then pay for the supplies. And the wood shop is one that's coming to my mind.
Right.
They pay for this supply. I mean, some of these kids make the beautiful furniture. Some of those supplies are costly.
Sure.
But yeah, when they get into those higher level classes, those.
But who would that question be directed to as to how do we help those students that may not have, their family may not have the resources to be able to participate? You know, because people have raised before about, you know, equity and inclusion, and for me that seems like a big component to say that, you know, it's not their fault that their family doesn't have the resources, but how can they be included in the Penridge experience, you know, across the board on some of these things, whether it be from, you know, taking a month to go to Spain to learn Spanish, or, you know, just trying to play an instrument and having to rent the instrument. So, but who would that be directed toward?
So, I think Dr. Bull would be able to answer that question, and I know Dr. Scheid would be.
Okay.
I think there are things in place, but I'm going to let them answer the question.
So you guys can, if there's like sponsorships,
Yeah,
you
well, just
somebody can
because it's,
sponsor
you know,
something
people
else,
have
the
talked
student
about
and stuff like that.
systemic
I would
related
assume.
issues.
Yeah.
You know, and I've not seen anything system-wise, other than if you don't have the resources to participate, it seems like a pretty difficult thing to be able to overcome if you're, you know, again, trying to, we want everybody's Penridge experience to be consistent, right?
Agreed.
But, I mean, at the same time too, I hear what you're saying, but I even think, you know, with being older, I wish we had some more opportunities to like teach them how to apply for jobs and things like that, because there's so many things just to help to be like self-sufficient if you want something and go after it, those type of things too.
Yeah, I
So-
don't disagree, but I think that, I don't know, there should be something there to the extent that,
I do feel like most times, and I know Dr. Walton's not here, but I do feel like most times when there is a student in need, I'm almost certain it
but I'd like to know how that
Right.
comes about, what's the
And-
process?
Mhm.
Because I could see too, of somebody just not applying because, hey, I don't have
right.
the money to do that, so I'm just not gonna sign up for that class.
Right.
Whereas if somebody knows that if you fill out this application, you can still take this class
Mhm.
and it'll be, even if there's people in the community, and that's where I thought of our, the Penridge Foundation
Yes.
component, that would be a great partnership with them, as opposed to simply saying, hey, we'll put in a new swing set or something.
Right.
But to say, hey, these students that are looking to expand their educational experience
Mhm.
but don't have the resources to do it, this might provide an opportunity for them to.
When we get into the student activity accounts a little bit, there's actually an account there, it's called the Sunshine Club, and it actually provides funds for kids. The kids raise money to provide funds for kids that need things. It's like they help kids go to the prom this year, and different fees and things like that kids would have cost to. Kids that they apply and they get those funds from that club to.
That's great to know, that would be good to know.
Go to the prom, but, yeah, so Dr. Bolton's back now, so.
I was just looking through all these, and you can direct me, we don't have to go through it now, but the right person to know if, and again, just trying to make the Penridge experience being consistent for people, whether you have resources or no resources.
Right.
And, I said before, the only thing from a systemic standpoint that I've seen since my short tenure on the board is saying, hey, if my family doesn't, we know that 1/3 of the student population needs some sort of assistance for food. If I need assistance to purchase food, I'm not gonna be spending $100 on a lab fee for whatever, or renting an instrument. And I'm just wondering, how do people become aware if there are resources like the Penridge Community Foundation or the Sunshine Foundation? And I wonder if that's being made known to families or people, because I could see someone saying, hey, I'm not gonna sign up for Metal Shop if I know that I know it's
Simply
elective.
because of it.
Because of that fee, I'm just not gonna do it. Whereas it would be good to know, like whether it's an asterisk on the form, whatever the application, not application, but the selection process is, to say that if you are in need, there are some organizations or resources to be able to help you offset it depending upon.
Right.
Is that available, or who's
Yeah.
that better addressed to?
And
Who's the person?
so, well, at every level, we do identify kind of those defining moments and make sure that every kid gets them. So you think about like your final yearbook in elementary school. You think about certain trips that are kind of like the highlights of the experience. And so we do make sure, our schools know our families very, very well. So we do make sure that all of those students, and we make sure there are funds available. Now, we don't know how many people choose not to ask or not to sign up for something that isn't one of those defining moments. So when you think about the prom, you think about senior pictures, you think about those types of things, we take care of that kind of stuff, and we know our families. And so sometimes that's outside support, a lot of times it's inside support through Sunshine Clubs or things like that happen at every building level. Because you've mentioned this one other time, we have put it on our summer talk list with our principals to kind of say, let's talk about some of those types of things. Are there ways to fill that gap so that we better communicate it and also better understand the need for some of those things that we may not be aware of? Because I can't tell you whether there are families who choose not to sign up for an instrument because of the rental, and that would be a shame. Right? And there probably are some, we catch and some we don't. And that's one of the things that it's not, because not everybody wants that. And so how do you know if that's a defining moment for that family or not?
Sure.
And how can we better get at that type of thing? Because we don't solicit hard community partnership for those types of things, because the needs we know of, we fulfill. And so when we need them, we go and we ask, and they're very, very gracious to us in terms of those members of our community. But there aren't those other things. And so we really are trying to take some time to wrap our heads around how do you get there, short of putting up a billboard that says, hey, call us. And you hope families will. And if they do,
you don't
we
want
can
a stigma
accommodate
attached to it either.
Exactly
that
right. Right.
You're the person who's paying with whatever, But I get it. But it just, yeah.
And
I'm
those
glad you're
people
working on
are,
it.
yeah,
That's-
and those people are counselors, nurses, administrators, and teachers. Are the frontline people who know very, very well to meet kind of those basic's the wrong word, but kind of meeting the set needs that we've kind of defined. It really is the going beyond that and to figure out what isn't happening because we wouldn't know.
Right.
You know, because it's not every student who wants to take metal work, but if there
Right.
is a student who wants to take metal work, how do we help them with a lab fee
You know, are
that's
there any
whatever?
fees associated
So-
with our tech program? Or are there student fees associated with the tech?
I don't know if any of the individual programs, there are no costs to attend tech school.
Okay.
And so I don't know whether there are like how uniform costs are handled and those types of things. I'm certain the same type of structure is in place at the tech school in terms of that, but I'll have to ask those questions as to whether some programs are more expensive than others because of you have
Or,
to
I'm
pay
sure they're more
for
expensive, but I just
XYZ.
wonder whether the student has to.
That's what I meant by
Yeah,
that.
okay.
In terms of the expense to the student, yeah, in terms of like for law enforcement, do you have to buy uniforms?
Right.
And that's very expensive where, you know, I couldn't name the other program that
Sure.
might not have that, but.
It's a
yeah.
great opportunity for you to come to a tech school board
Ha.
meeting so you can ask
And
those
ask that
questions.
question.
Yes.
And
We'd
we,
like
I thought
to
we had
see
some
you there.
sort of liaisons that we bring it up here and then they.
Oh, you want us to report
I'll get you
back?
the
you want messengers?
They're
Meetings are
wonderful
great.
conversations to have though, right? To be able to provide for students
Yeah, it's
because
just something that I know,
Yep.
so I may bring it up each time that I see it.
it's
so we-
awesome.
Just to have that
Yep.
conversation keep going on.
And our community is so wonderful in terms of the
you
response
would
when they
think,
know
right,
those
I
types of
agree,
things are
I
there. So it
agree.
is not, it's
Yeah.
not by lack of, but it really is how do you get that awareness, both from a family standpoint and a school system standpoint, so that we figure out when that's appropriate to
Right,
ask
right.
David Bolton's family if, you know, those
Right.
types of things. So, no.
It's only one night a month. It's the third Thursday of the month.
So that's the fourth night each month?
Okay, number 14, these are our student activity account requests for renewal and carryover of funds for next year. Our student activity account manual that's in place in the district requires annually that the clubs put forth to the board a request to continue on next year. And if they have, if they want to carry over funds from one year to the next, they also request that. So this is the first group of them. I'm sure we don't have them all yet. There's quite a few clubs and activities. These are from the high school, central, south, and north. So I'm sure we will have more coming, in the fall that we don't have quite yet. The one that seems to always be the interesting one, or one that's asked about, is what's going to happen to the class of 2022's money that they have left over. What they've decided to do with any money they have left over after we get done, begin them paying for their prom and all the things that they're doing right now. They have requested that their extra money be given to the class of 2026, so that helps them get a start in their fundraising. So we thank those kids for looking out for the younger kids, the next generation.
And we'll learn about the gift tomorrow night at graduation. I don't know what the senior class gift is. That hasn't leaked yet.
That is
So
not.
I'm looking forward to it.
I will spare you going down through every one of them.
Thank you.
Number 15 is our annual list of the banks or depositories that we use for here in the district for different things. As you can see, that letter A is Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust. We have funds invested there. QNB is our local depository. New York Bank of Mellon, or Bank of New York Mellon, we use that as our paying agent for our bonds, so payments go through there. PISLAF is one of the major funds that we invest our monies in. And then we also have PNC Bank, which is our credit card company that backs our credit cards. And then Penn Community Bank, they hold some of our scholarship funds, the local Penn Community Bank. So those are the depositories that we're currently using. So, and then number 6 are our list of cooperative purchasing companies or agreements or participation or purchasing programs that we participate in. And this list is the same as last year, but these are the different groups that we use for that service. So we just get your approval of those each year so that we can continue to use them. And then number 17 is an item I have on each June. Basically, you won't see, we won't see you again until August, but we need to continue paying bills and so forth for the school district. Our fiscal year ends on June 30th, so we have a busy summer ahead of us. So we ask your permission to continue operations. We send you out a list of bills so that you know what's going on and what's happening with the finances over the summer. But this basically just gives us your permission to keep moving things forward. We don't want to become in arrears of bills or so forth because we're not having a meeting. So,
Okay, thank you, Sean.
thank you.
The next finance committee meeting is scheduled to be determined, so the date to be determined, that is, will be in August. It's just a matter of what day.
Does it make some sense to take about a 5-minute break before we begin personnel? Sure. So to stretch our legs. So, Mr. Alexander, if you would let us know when the live stream is off and the microphones are down. Mr. Russell, we're ready when you are. We're back on the air.
Okay, we'll call the Personnel Committee to order, and there's no public comment, so we'll skip over that. The first item is the review of job descriptions.
Okay, so again, we continue to revise the job descriptions this month. They are based on the nutrition service group. And again, my department works with the nutritional service managers to review the job descriptions and send those out to see what changes have occurred since 1999, maybe, I think the one had on it initially. So, we're up to date with those. And the last job description, the Transportation Department Secretary, is the change of the 900-hour clerk, moving into a full-time secretary position that was in the budget and has been discussed the last several months. So this is the job description that clarifies that position.
So just for my understanding too, that primarily the cafeteria ones were just in some ways just changing the nomenclature of
Yes.
from cafeteria to nutritional services and some other tweaks.
Yes.
But the transportation one, that's an entirely new position. So that's a
Yes, so it took a 900-hour clerk position and added additional duties for a full-time secretary position. And while Sean's here, I'll pick his brain. If I'm correct, this person will serve as the secretary mostly to the assistant director. Both of them, but focus on that area as well.
Yeah, this person will work the later part of the day with the assistant director. So that
Right.
we have two people in the office. The first secretary will work the earlier shift with Mrs. Kraus, so that we have two people. But there's a lot of times where there's just one person because right now under our current driving predicament, neither Mrs. Kraus or Mrs. Robel are out on the road driving. So there's been a lot more reporting and different tasks that are now required in the transportation department that Mrs. Kraus outlined when she came and did her budget presentation. She had outlined the need for this position. She outlined all those different things. So we now have a 900-hour clerk there, but we need that. We're going to take that position and make that position full-time, so that we have enough hours to get done all the work that's not required there.
The next item was the life insurance contract renewal. Can you give this is just the group insurance that we offer? Or?
It is just our group insurance that we offer in accordance with our collective bargaining agreements and the administrative contracts. We're recommending to go with a different vendor this year. It's a savings of $11,771 and change, as you can see. Our current vendor was unable to match that bid, so we are suggesting to move forward with the other vendor. They will, they'll match the current policies in accordance with our CBA. We always check that. They have a conversion policy for retirement if someone wants to, take that with them and move beyond retirement and keep with the same vendor. And there's not much else to say about that.
Do we have any like key man policies?
Key man policy.
Yeah. So say we might insure Dr. Bolton, or we might insure Sean, so that knowing that if something happened to you, we'd be in a scramble, and so it pays the school district money to be able to try to cover those transitional costs of securing another person, but it's called a key man policy.
Oh, a key man.
He-Man. I thought I heard He-Man too.
Yeah,
It
He-Man.
covers Mr. Daubert's slide rule. His important equipment.
I probably have the wrong terminology now, but that's what it has been called, is the
Yeah.
key man policy. So if you have key personnel within your cabinet, you want to insure them so that you're not scrambling, to try to find, money to be able to cover the financial issue of it. Anyway, I just wondered about that. But this is all term life insurance, and it's all for pursuant to the union contract.
You see that a lot in finance,
Yeah.
where you have a president of a company, he wants to put on additional financing on his company to buy equipment, and you look at him and you say, if you leave the company, there's no more of a company. So then you have a key man life insurance policy on the president of the company in case anything would go wrong with it.
Interesting. I was not aware
We do
of
not
that.
currently have anything like
We
that.
do.
We do not have,
So in other
we
words-
have that.
You can't have that for Dr. Bolt?
We're not quite key enough.
All right.
Yes, we are.
The next is the stop loss renewal.
So the stop loss renewal this year is going to remain with the incumbent. They are nationwide RMTS. They have an A+ rating, so they're they're good company. They're from top companies. We were remaining with a deductible of $225. We do not have any lasers this year. Last year we had a double laser, which is assumed liability for individuals that would be pulled out of the general book of business for the stop loss carrier. So everyone would be covered for $225,000. There were 2 individuals based on their claims and their health history. They were rated higher at $75,000. So we're kind of coming out even, maybe even a little better this year because of the losing the lasers.
Help me understand that. So what do you mean this is for, because we're self-insured?
Yes.
We're self-insured,
So
right?
this is for our health insurance.
Right,
And
and
so,
RX.
so this is, so we don't, if it goes to a certain amount, then this is the carrier that provides excess coverage?
Right, so this is the carrier that would kick in if I hit $225,000 in health issues
Per person?
per person. From that point forward, this company picks up the bill.
Okay.
We've been very fortunate.
Reinsurance.
We've been very fortunate this past year. No one has hit that level so far, which is, I think, why we're getting a comparable rate. We are very close with 4 individuals, very close, and we have until June 30th, so we have, about almost a full month to go for claims to be submitted under that. One of those individuals, again, is lasered, so we have to assume $75,000 above that.
And explain that to me, what do you mean no
So
lasers?
the deductible is $225,000 per individual. If you have someone who is lasered, that's an additional $75,000 on that before stop loss will pick up
They were high
any
claimants.
claims.
They were high claimants in that previous year
Yeah.
that they were looking at, so they
So they
took,
call them lasers?
yeah, they take a look at those people and say, we're lasering them out.
Oh,
And you have, instead of their deductible being $225, they need to get to $300,000 before
Right.
we'll pay for anything.
so how high can they make that deductible for that lasered person?
Well, when you put this out for bid, they can do whatever they want, but
So
they try to keep it reasonable because they know they'll lose the bid.
Okay.
Or sometimes they can say, we're not covering X, Y, or Z, right?
They can do that.
They can deny the.
Right.
So then we
Only
have to
for
be,
the
there's
laser.
no stop loss coverage for that person, then we're on the hook
Right,
for
we
that completely.
probably wouldn't go with a vendor that would
Yeah, we wouldn't,
make that comment.
too much of a risk.
It is too much of a risk.
But I can see, yeah, okay.
It is. So it's a necessary evil, unfortunately, to
But back
have
with the
costs.
self-insurance, do we pay the rack rate then, when we get a bill, do we pay that, or is there some sort of, self-pay adjustment, or, cause
So Independence Blue Cross is our
manage,
carrier.
okay,
So, just if you've ever seen an explanation of benefits, they'll charge $1,000.
right,
And then they have the Blue Cross rate.
right, they go through that, so
Right.
we get that Blue Cross rate, but we're
Right,
just
we don't pay
self-insured through
whatever
Blue
the-
Cross, I
Right,
got you,
Right, exactly.
alright.
One other little point to bring up with the stop loss. Last year, we were fortunate to have a clause inserted into this current year's contract that provides for a claim management fee of 5% premium rebate that's paid to the district if the stop loss is less than 50% of the total annual gross paid premium, and that's a lot. At this point, we have not hit that, so we may receive that 5% rebate, which will be $34,000 to $35,000 savings on the current premium. So that helps us out a little bit too. So we're hoping, like I said, we have almost a month to go, but right now we haven't hit for anyone. So again, the recommendation is just to stay with the incumbent,
And the incumbent is
is RMTS nationwide. The next is the site agreement, which it's just basically putting to print what we discussed previously about the mechanic stipend.
And basically, he or she would be paid, 10,000 more than what the,
Current
no less
highest
than,
compensated.
no less than
right.
10,000 more than.
Mhm. So this is a lot of legalese there, Jonathan.
Yeah.
That's-
That's why we get paid.
I think the one paragraph pertains to what we were talking about, the rest
Right,
is all,
right,
so,
right.
yeah. And the last is, a revision to the non-contracted employee compensation plan that, mirrors the Act 93 plan in regard to vacation. So just to break it down, the non-compensated employees, for the most part, follow the Act 93 contract. When we developed the new Act 93 contract, there was a clause in there that when an employee is hired, they receive their vacation time upfront or prorated if they start after July 1st. That way they're not, paid on the back end, and they have vacation time to use throughout the year. We, of course, did this contract prior to Act 93, so we wanted to mirror that language for anyone coming into this group from this point forward. And nothing else changed in the contract. That was it, just to mirror that language with Act 93, since that
And
changed.
on the vacation.
It's on vacation.
Okay. I got you.
Kim, I had a question just from a procedural standpoint. Do we need to change the signature page? Does this have to be
I saw that.
re-signed, or is it just in addition to what has currently been signed? And if so, we'll obviously need to change the board president. And so I just didn't know what we had to do in terms of that, so.
Good point, and yes, I was gonna actually have it re-signed.
Okay, so then let's just make sure we change that for the
Yep.
version that's posted at the end of the week. Thank you.
Good point.
Yeah.
Before I send that off to Nancy.
I do look at the stuff.
I'll send a clean version without all the red on
That's
there.
why you have insurance on me.
So that,
Maybe both.
that is all we bring to you this evening.
And why does it, for all of our committees, does it say to be determined? We don't know when our next committee is for this?
So we have the dates that we've sent out. We're confirming with the IU and tech school that we're not planning on top of any of them. I actually had hoped that I could send it out today, but
Okay.
it looks as though I'll need to send it out tomorrow or Thursday. But yes, we do. And it follows the same rhythm, so it really will be
Right.
first Monday of August, second Monday of August in terms of the meetings, but we just have
So we have no meetings in July,
there are no meetings currently scheduled in July.
and then we
That
have
is
no
correct.
meetings in December. That's the rhythm.
So what will happen this year is we will have we always have a December reorganization meeting. And so in non-election years, in non-school board election years, we don't hold our November board meeting. They end up being about a week and a half apart, depending on, when the November meeting is. And so we don't hold both of those meetings because there's nothing in between them. And so we cancel the November meeting because we must hold the December meeting. In election years, we hold both the November and a December meeting because the November meeting is how you clean up all the voting items off of the current board before the new board takes their seats. And so you want them to be able to vote on the things they talked about and not the new board members approving them in December when they weren't even part of the conversations. So then December truly just becomes reorganization. There's almost no business that happens other than the reorganization. What we'll do this December, we won't have the November meeting. That Monday of Thanksgiving week is when it usually is. And so in December, all the business items from the November committees will be in that December meeting, right? Because, so.
I think we're adjourned then.
Great. So Alexander, if you would let us know when we're off.
Chester and Dan.
Thank you. Which just